Hey, everybody. It is Monday at noon Pacific, which means it's time for Content Chat. And today I have a very special guest, Jay Baer, who's going to chat with us about something that might not immediately seem like a content marketing kind of topic. But let me assure you, it's important for content marketers to be thinking about speed. So that's what he is here to talk to us about. And no, I'm not talking about that kind of speed. We're talking about customer experience speed. So Jay, welcome to Content Chat.
Erika, great to be here. Thanks for having me on. Hey, everybody. Nice to be part of Content Chat.
All right. So talk to me about speed. I feel like that's all, we're hearing about whenever we're hearing about customer experience and, where companies are really falling down. So how did you get interested in speed and, how did all this happen for you?
I think this is true. Let's see here. Yeah, I think that's right. All 6 of my prior books included at least a section on speed because it's always been important in the pantheon of marketing and customer experience initiatives to be responsive to your customers and prospects. However, Erika, my observation coming out of the pandemic was that we care about our time more than we did before. And as always, before I write a book, I always want to validate it with my own research. And so I spent a bunch of time and money, as I always do, on a national study, in this case, the most comprehensive study really ever conducted in the US, on the relationship between responsiveness and revenue. And it turns out all of these trends that we've been talking about for a couple of years, the great resignation and quiet quitting and people wanting to work from home because they don't want to commute, bleisure travel. We were talking about conferences a minute ago offline. That's the combination of business and leisure travel where you take your kids to the conference and double dip your trip. Like you see it in Orlando all the time. That's a trend. Major League Baseball pitch clock now. Average game, 26 minutes a night shorter, record ratings. All of these trends are the same trend, which is that we care about our time more than ever. And so in the research, I found that indeed this is true. And in fact, today, 2/3 of customers say that speed is as important as price. So my conclusion is that businesses need to elevate speed and responsiveness on their list of internal priorities because their customers and prospects have already done so. And right now, there's a disconnect between how fast we as people want businesses to operate and how fast most businesses are capable of operating. And we've got to close that gap in our organizations.
Do you have a sense for how big that gap is as far as realistically, let's talk about, email responsiveness. If the customer emails a business, are they expecting same day response, same hour response?
I actually have the data on that. I don't have it in front of me, but for email, I believe 45, it's almost half of all customers expect an email reply within 4 hours.
And I got to tell you, we rarely get that from most businesses.
Yeah. So how big is the gap? I think it depends. It depends on a couple of things. It depends on the channel because we do have different speed expectations by contact mechanism. It depends on the customer because there are some differences in cohort. So your age does impact how patient you are. And then also type of business. And I think we'll talk about this today. What's your issue? Like, what do you need? Like, if your house is on fire and you're calling the fire department, that's different than calling for fire insurance in terms of your sense of urgency and the responsiveness that you rationally should expect.
Excellent. So where do you feel like speed is most critical in the customer journey? Like, when is it super important to be responsive? I mean, obviously always, but are there certain points that...
Well, I mean, it's funny you asked that. I mean, kind of always. So we actually, in the research, we actually went through like all the key customer journey points, right? And said, okay, let's say you're looking for a price or you're comparing products or you're buying something, or you need an invoice, or you're getting a delivery, or you have a question, or you need help, like all the kind of key nodes. And it turns out that at least 3/4 of the time, customers say that for every one of those nodes, responsiveness is important or very important.
Yeah.
So indeed, the answer is always. But yes, there are scenarios where it is even more important. And those scenarios are twofold. One, if you have a problem, right? So something is not working as expected, right? So this is where customer experience becomes customer service, right? The best way to describe that is customer service starts when the customer experience fails. So in that scenario, we're like, hey, like just last night, I'm watching TV with my wife, and Netflix, great, Apple TV, great. We're trying to watch the finale of Curb Your Enthusiasm on Max. No, will not open, will not boot, will not do anything. I'm like, okay, is it my internet connection? Because now I'm getting ready to light up Comcast. Nope, because everything else is working. I'm like,
Yep.
okay, is it Max itself? Nope, because I can watch it on my phone. So somehow the Max app on the Samsung television was completely inoperable, right? So I was able to diagnose it, right? So in situations like that, thing is not working, you want quicker response. And then the other one we found pretty interesting, Erika, the other time where responsiveness gets really important, is if whatever has to happen next actually has an implication on your time and your schedule. So anything you have to um, like put on your calendar
Mhm.
or set aside time. So let's say, as a practical matter, scheduling a delivery of furniture, because I've got to put on my calendar furniture guy coming, as opposed to going to the office or do anything like that. You don't want to wait very long to get that figured out, because it creates a big level of uncertainty, and that really is one of the most important things that we found in this research. Yes, customers hate to wait, but the thing they hate second most is being underinformed, and that, friends in content chat, is where content marketing comes in, is making sure that there is not an information asymmetry between the business and its customers.
Well, that's a perfect segue into, bringing it all back into content marketing, because I got to tell you that the reason I reached out to you is because I loved this example you used of how when you were doing your trek from the East Coast to the West Coast,
Mhm.
that at one of the hotels you stayed at, because you were traveling with your dog, that they actually had a bespoke, little piece of content there of, hey, you're a dog person, you have your dog with you, here are some things, some places, some resources for you. And it's such a small thing, but it's such a great example of highly personalized content delivered just in time, right when you needed it. Usually, maybe they would send you an email
Yeah.
well before your trip that you wouldn't remember to look at, and you certainly wouldn't print out and bring it with you. But there it was in your room.
It's so true. We think about speed and responsiveness as an operational circumstance, and it largely is, right? We are talking about operations and CX. But a lot of times you might get the operations right, but if you don't use content to point out the fact that the operations are right to the customers, they will either not know it's right or will frankly assume it's wrong, because they've been taught to believe that usually the customer experience is just okay, if that. And yeah, we were driving from San Diego back here to Indiana, stopped at the Homewood Suites in Oklahoma, Tulsa, I believe, and they are dog friendly as a chain, and that's cool. A lot of places are, but when we checked in, they gave us a bag. And in the bag was like a little dog bowl and a little dog treat and a little dog toy, which is really cool. But the thing that was so interesting from a content standpoint is they actually had a printed out guide to all kinds of pet stuff, like hyper local. So it was like, okay, closest vet is, here's the address, phone number, directions, closest dog park, closest pet store, etc. Right? It was amazing. I've never seen anybody do that before, and that's not a real heavy lift from a content perspective. But I've found in my long content marketing career that in many cases the light lifts have the biggest impact. if you do it right.
Totally agreed. I mean, the only way that could have been more personalized is if it had had a picture of your dog on it, which, you
Well,
know.
I didn't think I mentioned this in the article, but it did have my dog's name on the bag, which, you know, they wrote it in Sharpie, but I'm like, that's still pretty great.
Right? It makes you feel like your dog is actually, being recognized as part of your family, which
That's right.
obviously your dog is part of the family. So I love that. So when you think about things like this, you know, that seem like such a small thing, but they're so customer first and customer
Mhm.
experience oriented, you know, how can content teams really evaluate and think through, are there these
Yeah.
opportunities where you can have that just in time delivery?
So here's what we've discovered in the research and in the subsequent stuff I've been doing on stage and in the book, The Time to Win, the world's shortest business book, um, is that, yeah, you should probably be faster than you are pretty much all the way through your business. That's true. But a lot of this isn't so much about raw speed, it's about expectation management. So it turns out there's this principle that we discovered called the right now. And the right now is the perfect amount of elapsed time in every customer touch point. Not too slow, certainly, but also not too fast, because you can be too fast. And it turns out that when you're trying to deliver the right now, it is, let me define it differently. The right now is slightly faster than customers expect. That's the perfect, like, Goldilocks zone, slightly faster than they expect. Now, I say that very intentionally because in order to land the plane like that, you have to know what customers expect. And so a big part of speed, quote unquote, is actually expectation management. And how are expectations set and managed? Almost always with content.
Yep.
Almost always with content, because if you don't set the expectations, we live in an era where your customers will always expect things to be instantaneous. So if they're not going to be instantaneous, then you have to content your way into that relationship. And I'll give you a quick example. Not too long ago, I was combining my passion and my profession, and I was shopping online while drinking tequila. Now,
This
don't
sounds
rec-
dangerous,
I
Jay.
don't rec- it was very dangerous because here's what happened. I bought this super cool pair of leather sneakers. And I get to the confirmation page after checking out, and it says, here's where the content starts. Thanks very much for your order. We're going to start making your shoes. So that's when my first eyebrow went up. And you should receive them in approximately 8 weeks. And that's when the second eyebrow went up. Because in my agave fueled zeal, I had not understood, based on this website, that these shoes were bespoke. I assumed that I would get them like in a day, Amazon style. And I thought, oh, well, I was going to wear those Saturday, and I guess now it will be Saturday 2 months from now. So that was a surprise. And that was a little bit of a disappointment, frankly. But then, okay, I talked earlier about how information asymmetry really makes people unhappy because we're conditioned now to always know the answer, right? You can just ask Siri, you can ask Alexa, you can do whatever, right? So not having the answer is very off-putting and very anxiety-producing now in a way it
Yep.
wasn't when you and I were much younger, for example. So here's how this business, Beckett Simonson, got around it. Every Wednesday, Erika, they sent me an email that said, Jay, it's week 3. We're now building the lasts for your shoes. And here's how we do this. And here's actually a video of Manuel at our factory in Argentina showing you how he goes about this process. Da, 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 da. Like, you know, it's literally like a 1,500 word email. Next Wednesday, it's step 4. Please meet, you know, Emmanuel. She's in charge of making the leather laces for these shoes. I mean, it was like a documentary film on custom sneaker making played out one email at a time. Like, I didn't want it to end. I'm like, take all the time you want. I'm having a really educational and entertaining experience. That's how you turn content into a salve for delay, because it's not about always how fast you are. It's about how fast does it feel. and content solves that.
And did you get your sneakers on time?
Yeah, absolutely. I did.
'Cause
Yeah. I mean, yes, on the time that they promised. Yes, it was they said 8 weeks. It was 8 weeks. So I felt pretty good about that after I got over the initial, like, oh, I've made a mistake.
'Cause I love that example, and I have the same example with, Joybird, except that we got to the week that it was supposed to be building my table,
Mhm.
and they said, "Whoops, we can't get we can't source the lumber." And I said, "But you've been sending me all of these lovely
Uh-huh.
emails for 4 weeks, and now I don't get a table?"
Yeah, and were those emails lies?
They
Yes,
shouldn't have, they
I
shouldn't
had
have.
an so it's so important to set expectations, and if something's going to run aground, you have to get in front of that with content. And it's because we care about time more than ever. This is more important than ever. So during the pandemic, I bought a custom sofa online
Mhm.
from this company called Monarch, and it was going to take, they told me, 8 weeks. And at that point, I knew what I was getting into. I wasn't drinking tequila, so I was like, okay, that seems like a long time to make a sofa, but you're picking out your legs and your fabric and da da da. I'm like, okay, fine. Well, on week 15, still no sofa. And I'm like, what's up? And I had not been getting, I mean, it was like radio silence for 4 months. Couldn't get a
Yikes.
hold of anybody, emails unreturned, live chat, no help. I'm like, should I just like reverse the charges on this credit card? So finally, after much endeavoring on my part, I got a hold of this woman, Genevieve. Oh, Mr. Baer. Yes, terribly sorry. It's been taking us about 16 weeks to make custom sofas. And I said, oh, well, okay. How long has that been the case? And she said, oh, about a year and a half. To which I said,
Oh, no.
why does it still say 8 weeks on your website? To which she said, we don't want people to stop placing orders.
Wow, that's terrible.
And I said, well, I guess that's a good gambit because you got my money, but you're not going to get any more of my money. Oh, and by the way, I do like 65 events a year where I'll be telling the story of Monarch sofas, including on Content Chat. So sometimes, you disappoint the wrong guy. I do love it though, and I sit on it to this day. It's a fantastic piece of furniture.
But you're never gonna tell anyone else to shop with them.
No, I am not. Quite the opposite, actually. Yes.
It is really funny because I thought that their excuse was going to be, oh, well, we don't have anybody who can update the website because, of course, from a content standpoint, that happens all the time.
Sure. No, I wish that would have been a better. I would have bought that one better. I'd be like, oh, okay.
But no, we
Yeah.
purposefully didn't want to
Yes.
let anyone know how long it would actually take.
Well, and this is the thing. Nowadays, especially with regards to response, like, okay, so my family has been in the furniture business since the 1850s. I'm a seventh generation entrepreneur. And so we started making furniture and selling furniture a long time ago. We don't do it anymore, but for many, many generations, that's what my family did. So I kind of know how that business works. And so like for a long time, and not just in the furniture business, in any business, if you're like, oh, we told you it'd take 2 weeks, it's going to take 3. And people might have been mildly disappointed, but nobody was like losing their minds. But now in this whole like time is everything world, which is again why I wrote a whole book about it, you can't do that, right? Because people get way more upset about it than they used to. So you want to fib to your customers about price or whatever, fine. But you can't fib to them about time anymore because they will go on absolute tilt. And so if you're going to be late for whatever reason, just like in Joybird's case, they should have let you know like 2 weeks before, or 10 days. You would have been so much happier if you just would have gotten some early notice. And then B, this is where content is really important, especially with younger consumers, with that cohort. You have to tell them why. You can't just say, I told you it'd be 3 weeks, it's going to be 4. Sorry. You have to say, I told you it was 3, it's going to be 4. And here's a video from our CEO explaining the situation. Or here's a standard piece of content with a flow chart or something that shows where this process is hung up. Because that cohort, they won't accept on face value that the sky is blue. Right? You've got to like literally like explain the things to them because they're suspicious of business and probably for good reason. So you have to have your content team put together the library of, we weren't able to make it happen when we said we could, and here are the reasons why that's the case.
Well, I think this is a good time to dive into your time to win framework,
Yeah,
because I think I mean, I personally would love to hear more about how it works because,
sure.
as a content person, I want to see how I can plug in and really have, be a help and not a hang up. I don't
Yeah,
ever
some
want to
of
be the
these
person
things,
sending out that series and getting and being, having the customer be blindsided.
and a lot of these things really apply internally first and foremost. Like if you can't get it dialed in internally, you'll never get it dialed in externally. Like it's just impossible, right? Because
Yeah.
a lot of times our operational slowdowns are because the other department or the other coworker or the colleague were too slow, right? Or dropped
Yeah.
the ball or whatever. It's like I couldn't get the answer from accounting or whatever. And,
Yep.
and so you really have to polish up, especially the departmental handoffs, in order, you can't be fast externally until you're fast internally.
Yep.
And a lot of folks try to go about it the opposite way, and it doesn't really work. What we'll talk about here, the Time to Win framework, 6-piece framework, is all in the book, The Time to Win, which you can get on Amazon for just $9 because it is, in fact, a very small and short book. You can read the whole book in 45 minutes. That is very much intentional. And I started to write a regular book because I've written 6 other regular books. And I started cranking on it and I was like, wait a second. I can't ask people to spend 5 or 6 hours reading a business book about speed. Like it doesn't, it's like that is literally the opposite of the advice that I'm trying to put out there. So let's write a very, very short book that people will actually read because there's not a lot of fluff in it. And it's actually been great. People love it. So the book is really inexpensive. It's like $9. Grab it on Amazon. You'll love it. All right. So first piece of the framework, and this is the one you really should do first. Not all of these are sequential, but this really is a foundational one that you should try and tackle first, is to perform what I call a got it audit. Got it audit. Got it audit asks you to figure out how long does it take your customers to get it, right? To get whatever it is that they need. And so you kind of go do some customer journey mapping, which most folks in the content biz should be familiar with. And you say, okay, well, how long does it take to get a couch built or get a delivery set up or pay a bill or get a question answered or get a demo set up from sales or whatever, right? How long does it take? Well, that sounds pretty obvious. But Erika, when you ask business leaders that question, how long does it take? What they say is, well, Jay, usually it takes about 2 days, but it could be 3. If it's over a weekend, of course, it could be 5. Now, Peter's in charge of that process, though. And if Peter's on vacation, it could be as many as 6 days, but he doesn't take that many days off. So I'd say usually 3, maybe 4. And I'm like, whoa, wait a second. That is not data. That is a collection of stories that you tell yourself. And if you're going to treat speed as a competitive advantage, which is the whole reason I wrote this book, because if you get faster than your competition, you will literally take their money from them. If you're going to use speed as a competitive advantage, you have to have real numbers, not just like anecdotes. So what the Got It audit asks you to do is to do some analysis inside your organization and put real numbers around your key time milestones in the business, because only then can you optimize against them. Does that make sense?
And from my experience, whether it's agencies or internal content creation teams, frequently they have no idea how long it takes to do a thing. So you get agencies just spitballing quotes for clients
Yep.
and losing money on things that they're doing because they literally have no idea how long it takes.
And I'll tell you, in the AI world, you can do some really cool stuff with that. My friends at Lane Terralever, who bought my firm, Convince to Convert, and are dear friends, they're very smart and very tech savvy. They actually went through and loaded 5 years worth of actual time tracking. Here's how long it took to build a website, to make a white paper, to do a webinar, to do a video series, to do an ad buy. 5 years full of projects, right? So, I mean, it's literally thousands of client projects.
Yeah.
They uploaded those to a GPT, mapped it against the initial estimate and statement of work to figure out, like, okay, what did we think it was going to be versus actual? And now when they go to give a client a quote, both financially and time horizon, it's number one, it's exact because they've got all this evidence. And number two, the time to figure out what the quote is going to be used to be like a week or two, and now it's one day.
That's so awesome.
Because they've
That's
used
what people want.
AI to figure out truth, right? Which is really smart.
That's so much nicer than having to wrangle it in a spreadsheet yourself.
Yeah, and most of the time you're making it up anyway. It's like the spreadsheet is just like window dressing. Well, it's in a spreadsheet, so it's got to be true. It's like, well, yeah, all the numbers in the spreadsheet you just made up. So it's not like, you're not really, you're just, again, it's a collection of anecdotes.
Yep.
Second thing you can do, and this is very much a content initiative, is to answer before they ask. So it's very common that customers or prospective customers have questions, and content answers those questions in many cases, unless they're calling into a service department or what have you. But in many cases, content can answer the question, whether it's email content, web content, social content, etc. But we don't really answer that many questions. Not really. One of the things I do in workshops a lot is I will ask business leaders to write down the 25 questions that they get most often from customers, and everybody can do it, like top of their head. And then I say, okay, well, how many of those answers can your customers or prospective customers get without talking to anybody? And it's usually on average 7 out of the 25. To which I say, well, what about the other 18? You literally just stipulated that this is a common customer question, yet customers cannot get an answer unless they're talking to a person, either face-to-face, telephonically, via email, chat, a demo. Why again is this the case? So this is sort of a Marcus Sheridan-esque call to arms, which is just answer before they ask. The fastest you can possibly be is when you provide what people need before they have to request it. I was in Scottsdale doing a speech not long ago, and I was at the pool because I had an afternoon off. And I'm just sitting there reading my Kindle. It's a resort setting. The pool personnel walks up to me with a strawberry daiquiri and said, "Mr. Baer, you were putting off strawberry daiquiri vibes." I'm like, you're right. I was putting out strawberry daiquiri vibes. You're a warlock. You're the best person ever. Like, that's the fastest you can be, right? Predictive. And we can use content, especially in the AI world, when we get our data aligned, we can use content to be predictive, right? To look around corners and say, we're pretty sure this is what you're going to need, right? And the perception of how fast you are as an organization goes through the roof because they never even had to raise their hand.
Yeah.
It's a really important one and can have a huge impact on customer satisfaction overall.
Totally. And when you do have a question and you can't find the answer and then you have to resort to emailing or calling, you're already annoyed.
Yes, absolutely. Because now you're costing me time, literally.
Exactly.
Third one I'm excited to talk about because it will help you not just in your business, it will help you in your personal life, right? It'll help you with your kids and your spouse and your mailman and your friends. And it's called Respond Without Answers. Today, if somebody has a question or query or needs something from you and you can't immediately answer it or provide it, what we usually do is we go look it up, or we ask accounting, or we Google it, or we do whatever has to be done to procure the information or the thing. And then once we've done that, we say, here's what you need. Stop doing that. Because the whole time you are looking it up or asking accounting or doing whatever you need to do, and then maybe that's 2 hours, maybe it's 2 days, maybe it's 2 weeks, that entire gap of time that you're figuring it out, the person who had the question is slowly freaking out.
It's true.
You're working on it, but they don't know that. They don't know that. They assume that you didn't get it. When you send somebody an email, especially in a business setting, and you don't hear back for 2 days, we all play this talk track. Didn't hear back from Erika. I wonder, is it possible that my email went to spam? Maybe she's just out of office, but didn't set a thing, didn't set the out of office message.
Maybe she's ignoring my email.
Right. Is she just blowing me off? Did I have a weird attachment on it? Right. Do I have the email address wrong? Should I call Erika, or does that seem sad and desperate? Right? We just like play all these mental games, and the whole time you're just working on the thing. But I didn't know that. So here's how you handle it. This is true, again, not just in business, but with your family and your friends and everybody. This is true for content marketers, customer service people, executives, doesn't matter, factory workers. Somebody needs something and you don't know the answer immediately. Thank you for your question. It was such a good question. I don't know the answer immediately. I'm going to look it up. And then once I get the answer, I'll let you know. That's it. You just send a quick voicemail, email, chat, whatever you're using. And all you're saying is, I got it. And the second that you say, I got it, it takes it off of their to-do list and they put it on your to-do list. And the psychological difference there is massive.
Yep.
Two good things happen. One, their perception of how fast you are goes way up. And two, it actually buys you more time to respond. Because one of the things that we learned in the research, which is really important, is that time to reply is more important to people than time to resolution. Because time to reply carries a psychological burden, not just an informational burden. Once you know that you're going to get an answer eventually, it takes the pot off boil.
And it makes sense. And I think just nobody ever really asked that question before. So it's awesome.
That's what I'm here for. Asking questions nobody's asked before. That's the whole reason I do this. Yeah, I've been doing that technique, the respond without answers, for like a couple years now. And it's made such a huge difference.
I'm totally going to steal that. And I also might send cute dog pictures because I think that's a nice vibe.
Great. I love it. Yeah, that's a good way to do it. I'm working on it. Cute dog. That's all you need. That's all you need. Fourth one, we talked about it already, so I won't get into it too much, is to set speed expectations, right? That if the customer thinks it's going to be faster than you can deliver, whose fault is that?
Yours.
It's your fault. It's your fault. And it's probably a content shortcoming more so than anything else.
Yep.
That you just really have to make sure that you are over delivering on that particular piece of it. And it's not just around time, speed expectations. It's around any type of operational scenario, which brings us to the next one, which is to close uncertainty gaps. So uncertainty gap is the difference between what you know about your business and what the customer knows about the business. Now, there are some industries that have naturally large uncertainty gaps. Financial services and healthcare are two noteworthy examples, but all businesses have them. And again, this is more of a generational era issue because older people lived in a time with great uncertainty, with uncertainty chasms, and we were totally okay with it because we had no way to solve for it.
Yep.
My wife and I were
Google to ask.
Yeah, we didn't. I mean, so my wife and I were watching TV when it was working a couple weeks ago, and Cher came on. And I turned to her and I said, how old is Cher? Because it's hard to say. At first glance, you're like somewhere between 40 and 140 is pretty much the only rational answer. And so we, of course, asked Siri and discovered that Cher is, in fact, 77 years old. Now, in days gone by, and it's been a while now, so any of you younger folks tuning into Content Chat, like, what is this old man talking about? But trust me, it wasn't that long ago. If you wanted to know how old Cher was, you would have to get in your goddamn car. You'd have to drive down to the library and meet with a reference librarian who theoretically would have a book on actors and singers and their ages. It would help you find that book and then help you index it to see for Cher. And then you would discover that Cher was, in fact, 77 years old. Now, that process, car, library, librarian, book, if it even exists, it would probably take, I don't know, 2 hours, 3 hours, like a while.
And only during normal business hours.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, during library hours. So yeah, we actually asked this at night. We couldn't have known. And so you know what we used to do? You remember this, Erika. We used to just say, I don't know. we would just say, I don't know. Cher's age is apparently unknowable. and we were totally okay with that. Like, I don't know was a very acceptable conversational response. And it no longer is. Because if you don't know now, you're just lazy. Like you do know, or you can find somebody. Yeah, Carm, exactly. It's in the microfiche. That's probably what I would have had to do. I don't even know how to use a microfiche anymore. So now all of these like uncertainty gaps are being closed all around us. And like Domino's Pizza Tracker, perfect example, right? We used to be like, they're making a pizza, it'll be here. And now I'm getting push notifications. They're putting mushrooms on your pizza. They're putting cheese on your pizza. The pizza's in the car. The cars are, I'm like, dude, I believe it's going to come. You're a multi-billion-dollar company. Like I trust you guys. It's going to happen. But we're so used to having information all the time that when we just have a little gap, it like freaks us out. So this is where content is so critically important. Anytime that you know more than your customer knows, you're at risk with that customer or that prospect. So you've got to over communicate to them with content. And one of the things that business leaders say to me when I talk about this, they say, Jay, we don't want to annoy our customers by giving them so much content. To which I always say the same thing. Oh, I know what you mean. I'm sure it's super common that customers call in and say, please stop informing me so well. Very common complaint.
Yeah, that's definitely a said no whenever.
Yeah. And one of the reasons people think that is because content creators, ipso facto, read every word because they wrote every word. So of course, if you're going to send a daily email, a weekly email, or whatever, the person who creates that is going to be like, that seems like an awful lot of content. Guess what? Your customers or your prospects are reading every fifth email or every third sentence. Like, of course it feels like a lot to you because this is your job. This is like 1% of their life at best. They're skimming it at best. So here's my rule, Erika. If it feels to you as a professional content creator that you are over communicating, you are communicating just the right amount.
It makes sense. It really does.
If you don't feel like you're over communicating, you're probably not communicating enough.
Yeah, I believe it. That totally
makes sense. Guide. It's a handy guide. It really is. It really works. Last one is a real moneymaker. Easy way to make money in literally any business. I wish I would have done this when I owned my professional services firm. I wasn't smart enough at the time to think of it. So it's called offer a fast pass. There are fast passes increasingly all around us. Yep. Disney has the Genie Plus, right? You pay extra money, you get to Disney World earlier, you get to ride the rides before the great unwashed show up. TSA Pre is a fast pass. Clear is a better version of a fast pass. It's just you pay more to wait less. And we tested this in the research. Check this out. 1 in 4 customers will pay as much as 50% more to not wait.
I believe it because I'm one of those people.
You should give them that choice. And we would get big companies, big clients would come in to convince and convert and want a content strategy. And me, being an idiot, would say, well, that's great, giant company, but we've got 2 in front of you, so we can't work on your strategy until July. And then sometimes they would wait, and sometimes they would go hire somebody else. And now I'm like, well, that was crazy. If you're in that much of a hurry, we'll be like, great, for an extra 20%, we'll start on your project next. Now, what people always say is, well, Jay, somebody was going to be next. What do you do to those people? That's like the same thing as you not getting your couch on time. No, it's not. Here's what you do. So let's say company A was going to be next. Company C comes along and says, we got to have a strategy right away or our CMO is going to get fired. Like, okay, we're going to charge you 20% more. Then you go to company A, who you got to bump 3 weeks. And you're like, hey, we've got an emergency client situation here. We're terribly sorry. Would it be okay if we delayed your project for 3 weeks, but we're going to take 10% off your price? And they'd be like, yeah, great. And so you make 10% for doing nothing other than like cutting pastrami in your deli in a different sequence.
I love that. And it really does then everybody loves a bargain. So, being able to deliver a bargain for their inconvenience definitely helps. And if on the flip side they came back to you and said, "Well, Jay, we really can't push it out," then that's when you're like, "Oh crap, we need to get some freelancers."
Right. Yeah. But at least that it's actually a really interesting point, Erika, because it actually really lets you know then as an operator, well, how important is it to them? Because that's not a conversation you typically have unless you have to have it, right? So yeah, it's and I've been talking about this on stage all over the world last year, and it doesn't matter if you're a chiropractor or you're running a preschool or like whatever, this can work for you, the Fast Pass.
I love it, and I wish every business offered it, because 9 times out of 10, I will pay more in order to get things done more quickly.
Plumbers have been doing it forever. Like if there's water like shooting out of your house, they'll come. It's going to cost you, but they'll show up.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah. So that's the 6-piece Time to Win framework. The reason the book is called The Time to Win is that because we're in this era where customers value time more than ever, pretty much everything we've talked about here today, you're going to do. Like everything we talked about, you're eventually going to do. Customers are just going to demand it. You're not going to have a choice. It's just whether you do it now or later. The companies that start doing this now are going to have, based on what I believe in my research, I think a 24 to 30 month head start, maybe less with AI, maybe a 2-year window of opportunity to outperform competitors, because customers are increasingly voting based on responsiveness. 51% of customers will hire whomever contacts them first.
It's true.
Regardless of price. Regardless of price. So knowing that, why wouldn't you make responsiveness like a huge part of your company's differentiator? And those who do so, those who lean into the things we just talked about in the framework, are going to have an opportunity to meaningfully and demonstrably outperform competitors in the category. That's why this is the time to actually win, and you use time to do so.
I love that. Have you, through the course of talking through this framework with folks, have you found that there are some tools, technology, or maybe even low tech ways that people have really been able to put this into practice that you would recommend?
Oh, sure. Actually, one of the tools that I've been working with a lot on the book tour is called Time to Reply. Such a really interesting company, really inexpensive too. They're based in South Africa. It works for kind of service teams, but also for sales teams. And it's a ride-along app that syncs up with your Outlook, your Gmail, whatever you use for email. And based on some things that you set in your deal, number one, it tells you and potentially your manager, if you want to set up that way, how long does it take for you to respond? It pings you if for whatever reason it's taken longer than usual for you to respond or for the customer to respond to you. And then it actually prioritizes your inbox based on how long it's taken between pings, and even like, who is this customer, right? So if it's like a big customer, it'll automatically put that on top of your inbox, things like that. And there's all kinds of metrics. So it's essentially an email responsiveness optimization tool called Time to Reply. Really amazing. Like that kind of stuff is happening everywhere. And it's really, really exciting.
That is really cool, because I don't know about you, but I have 250,000 unread Gmail messages. So
yeah, you can probably solve that problem. Yes, I do not. I have... I turned over a new leaf before I even started writing the book, but I have 0 unread, and I only have about 7 in my inbox total. I keep it clean, because otherwise it's just bad news.
I would have to just delete everything and start
over. Yeah. New account. I understand.
Which is what I worked for other people and not for myself. That was the starting over, and Inbox Zero was so much easier in those situations.
It's actually easier to change jobs than to go through this. Yeah, you're not wrong.
I love it. What have you, when people are committed to this, when they're like, yes, we need to do this, have you found that there is kind of like one really common big blocker that organizations have to fix first? Is there like a universal problem
Um,
that a lot of us are having?
yeah, I mean, the universal problem is that people don't understand that today responsiveness equals revenue. What I hear is we're as fast as we can be, to which I say that's complete and utter bullshit. You're as fast as you choose to be. And the reason you don't choose to emphasize speed in your organization, there's only one reason. And it's because you don't understand that it creates dollars,
Yep.
right? Once you understand that the things I'm telling you are not only going to reduce churn, but are going to gain net new customers, then you're like, oh, well, maybe we should lean into this a little bit. So that it's just, people believe that it's a cost, not an investment. And once they kind of turn their head around on that, they're like, okay, now we see.
That totally makes sense. So with that in mind, what is kind of the best way for businesses to do that assessment to figure out, you know, what are some of the things that are broken in their organization
Yeah.
or some of those, easy to fix ways to meet their customer needs better?
Yeah, I mean, the got it audit is a really important part of that, right? Because when you ask business leaders, like, how fast are you? Number one, they don't know. And number two, if they do know, it's just based on like stories that they get from the field. And then, we survey customers around satisfaction, right? And net promoter score and things like that. I would much rather survey customers around expectation versus reality in terms of responsiveness. Like,
Yep.
how long did you think this would take? How long did it take? How does that make you feel? And it's crazy because we did all that research. When you are slower than customers expect in any context, the emotional changes in the customer are amazing, right? You feel sad, disrespected, right? Unhappy,
Yep.
unlikely to shop from them again, right? Like a lot of really negative consequences. And then conversely, when you're faster than customers expect, it's like, I feel respected, I feel happy, I feel loyal, I feel likely to spend more money, like all these amazing things, right? So
Yep.
I would encourage businesses of any size and certainly of any kind of category, B2B, B2C, doesn't matter, to actually in whatever you're using to measure customer sat, put in a specific question around responsiveness, like on a scale of 0 to 10, how responsive do you think this organization is? You might be surprised in what you find.
I've definitely been noticing more organizations asking me those questions when I've had, some sort of a customer service engagement. And now I'm hoping that the Frenchie you can see there is not about to do
Yep, I
something
say
bad.
proof of dog.
Hey, Kupo, dude. Sorry about that.
That's
As you
great.
can see, I'm not being responsive enough to his needs,
I
which,
understand.
he needs to go
It
outside and
happens.
play.
It
But
happens.
um, so I've definitely been seeing more folks asking those questions. But what's always surprising to me is they'll ask that question, and it's really rare if you rate them poorly to get a response. Like if I
Mhm.
actually get a response from someone, it's usually if it's a pretty small early stage startup, then I'll
Yeah.
get a founder reply.
Yep. Yep. Well, it's because in many cases, medium and larger companies outsource the actual data collection,
Yeah.
right? So they're using, there's a lot of great companies out there, Medallia, Qualtrics, et cetera, to do that work, but they're not necessarily getting the answers in real time, right? They give the answers in aggregate and then decide what to do about it. Whereas in smaller companies, usually the customer support team, the customer success team, maybe even owner, manager, founder are going to get those emails. Different story, right? And it's going to be really interesting, Erica, in this era of AI content creation as well as AI customer experience. Like, I really think, if you believe customer expectations around speed are escalated now, just you wait, right? Because in every business, it doesn't matter what business you are, there is eventually going to be an AI based startup, which is going to do whatever it is that you do way faster because they're using AI from the beginning. They're not just like bolting AI on after the fact. I'll give you an example just to kind of contextualize this. Do you know the company Lemonade?
Mm-hmm.
So the renter's insurance company.
Yep.
So they're AI from the beginning, right? They built it with AI. So they can process claims. You record a video on your phone and say, my jacket got stolen. They use AI and machine learning to watch the video, look for signs of lying, right? Your eyes shifty, or your tone of voice weird. They do some credit lookups in the back. They figure out like how much it is the thing that you said you lost. You can't say I lost this pencil. It's $1 million pencil. Like they'll figure that out. And then they already have your bank account information when you set it up, and they can process the claim, slice off the deductible part, figure out what they owe you, wire it to your bank account, end to end, 3 seconds.
That's amazing.
3 seconds. So if you're Allstate, State Farm, Farmers, name your insurance company, and these guys are processing claims in 3 seconds. But every business, every category is going to have a Lemonade that comes in and says, well, what if we just used AI from the beginning to do this? And to me, that's going to be fascinating, because we talked earlier about if you can't do it instantly, you got to content your way around that. That is going to be a huge area of responsibility for all content marketers, is to manage expectations around responsiveness, because already the Amazonization and the Uberization of everything has changed kind of what we think is fast and slow. And we're just getting started on that journey.
And it's funny because Amazon, people frequently like to bag on Amazon, especially because they do outsource a lot of their customer service. But anytime I've had an issue with an Amazon delivery, it has been taken care of immediately.
Yes.
And I can't say the same for so many other providers. And, like with your Lemonade example, I just recently had a fence fall down because of weather here in California. And let me assure you, my claim did not take 3 seconds. And I had to do a lot of, hello, are you going to respond to me? Did you need something else? I spent a lot of time following up in ways, I was stressed. I'm like, I have to replace 2 fences. Is this person ever going to get back to me?
Well, and I would guess that in reality, what was happening is, as we talked about earlier, they were working on it.
Yeah.
Right. It was the reply without answers piece, right? All they had to say was, we'll call you.
Yep.
You don't need to call us because we're working on it. And your whole life would have been immeasurably better.
Exactly. So I can't wait for more folks to hear you and to really embrace your research, because it is amazing.
Speaking of the research, you can get it at the time with the time to win.info. No, sorry, wrong. Different one. theTimeToWin.com. theTimeToWin.com. And the whole research is there. I don't even gate it. I don't even want your email address. Just take it, read it, use it, love it. And you can get the book on Amazon and all that.
See, and this was such a good example of, I didn't even have to ask you for that, because that was going to be my next question, was where can folks get the research? And you anticipated my question, and your content was there. You're ready.
There you go.
I love it.
There you go. Happy to help.
Jay, where else can folks find you? Because I know you do a lot of speaking. Is there anything content related that you have on your calendar so far for this year?
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of content talks around the 3 drawbridges, which is my program around how to gain and keep customer attention when they're trying to hide it from you in a castle with a moat. So that's a really fun keynote. jaybaer.com is my main website for all things speaking, and my newsletter, which is super popular, the Bear Facts. And if you want to know everything you ever want to know about tequila, jaybaer.com.
Fantastic. We'll make sure that we link to all of that in our recap, and that'll be accessible on YouTube as well.
Fantastic.
So, Jay, thank you so much for hopefully inspiring folks to really take a look at what they're doing and how they can speed things up just to really improve customer experience. It's been a fantastic conversation.
Thanks, Erika. Great to see you as always. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Take care, and bye, everybody. See you next week.